Hello and welcome back to another Anyone Can Code video. My name is Yuma and I am a 5-time Apple SwiftUI Challenge winner as well as an app developer. Now, I just finished high school, so it's about time I made another YouTube tutorial. So today we're going to be making an AI-powered quiz app. So let's see how it works. You start off by choosing a topic for the quiz. In this case, I chose movies. The AI then generates a question and 4 options to choose from. If you answer correctly, your option will be highlighted in green, and an explanation for the correct answer will appear. If you answer wrong, your option will be highlighted in red. The tutorial is split into 2 parts. In this part, I will show you how to use a generative AI service, send and receive data from an API, and parse data into Swift struct types. In part 2, we will build the game's UI with SwiftUI. All the resources for this tutorial are in the description, and if you do enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started! Alright, so before I get straight into making this app, let's talk about the AI side of things and let's get that set up as well. So today we're going to be using Groq, which is a service which gives us access to a bunch of different AI models that is. And they also have an API, which is great because that will let us be able to talk to Groq from our app so that Groq can process the AI models and do everything for us. This is really good as well because Groq is free, or at least they have a free tier, which does have some limits on how many times you can send requests to Groq, but for what we're using, it's okay. If you do want to use it a lot more though, you will have to start paying because they do have a paid tier that you have to upgrade to. But we're not going to be using that today. And if you wanted to use another AI service that's not Groq, then that's okay. The API will be slightly different, so the code will change ever so slightly when we're trying to access the Groq API. But for most things, it should be okay. Just do your research and see which service works best for you. Anyway, let's go check out Groq and see what I can do. So on the top right, I'm going to click on the dev console and open that up. If you haven't signed up already, just sign up for Groq. It's that easy. And what you see when you open up Groq is the playground, which is their way of letting you test out the AI models. So the first thing that you might notice is that on the top there is a system message. What is a system message, you might ask? Well, it's just an instruction for the AI to follow. It's really as simple as that. We're basically kind of like programming the AI to follow our instructions. I already have the system message ready, and if you want to look at that, you can access it in the description along with all the assets and the final code for this project. And this message is honestly quite simple. It's just saying to create a quiz with some amount of questions. This is just some Swift code, so I'm going to replace it with a number, like 5 questions. And then we sort of just give the give him the idea and the rules to follow for making the quiz, such as we only need 4 options and only 1 option should be correct. And then down here we have a sort of JSON schema for it to follow. In other words, it's a format for it to create the quiz with. So the reason why we're using JSON is, first of all, Groq will support JSON outputs. As you can see, there's a JSON mode toggle. But also, this is really easy for us to turn into an object that we can use in Swift. So we can parse this really easily. This will contain everything with the questions, the options, explanations for the correct answers and all that. So this is all handled, and I've already typed this all in. I've already done a bit of experimenting with this system message. And over on the side here, we can see that there's a temperature which controls the creativity. I'll leave that alone. The amount of completion tokens is the maximum length of the AI's message. Tokens being sort of like words in your message. It's just small chunks of your message. Stream is whether it will type it word by word, but that's not going to happen because if we turn on JSON mode, it will force it off, so we won't have the AI sort of type out the message word by word, and it will just output it all at once. And also, I'm going to swap this over to Llama Spec Deck because that's the one that I'm going to be using. I'm going to switch on JSON mode again, and let's try it out. So if we type in animals as a topic, there you go. We get all of this information for our quiz, and that's really easy, really good to use. Let's move on to the next part, which is the documentation. I just wanted to mention this really quickly. If you do want to see more or do more research as to how the API works, there's always different parameters that you can use, and also the URL that we are going to use to talk to Groq. I'm not going to go over any of this because I'm going to talk about it later on. And then the final thing that we need to do is set up our API key. This is our credentials, basically like a password for us to be able to use Groq's services. So let's create an API key. I'm going to call it AI as our display name and hit submit, and it will generate us. It is very important that you keep this private just because it is kind of like a password, so keep it safe, keep it somewhere safe, and don't share it on the internet because otherwise people will spam requests through your account and that will cause lots of issues for you. So I'm going to copy it because we won't be able to see it again once you close this. So I'm going to hit done. I've already copied it, and that's all the AI things set up. So let's move on to the app, shall we? Okay, with the AI stuff set up, let's create a new app. So create new project in Xcode. We're just using a regular app on iOS, and it's just going to be Trivy AI for our name. Everything else here is okay, so we'll just create the app. Okay, and with the app created, I'm going to go over to the assets file, and this is where we're going to be dragging in all the assets that we're going to use. So I'm going to drag it straight in. They are made with Figma, and you can just download them in the description below. And we also need to chuck in our app icon, so I'm going to put it in any appearance. So these are all our images and also all of our custom colors that we're going to be using. Okay, I'm going to hit full screen so we can get started with the AI side. I'm going to create a new file, and this one's going to be for our secrets. In other words, this is going to be for our API key. So to create our secrets, I'm going to create a struct called secrets. We're going to have a public static let for our API key. And this is where we're going to store our API key. And public static just means it's publicly available. And it should be able to be accessed really easily. So I'm going to paste in this API key. So we will be able to use this secrets API key in other files. Just by using secrets API key. And this is why we use public static, because it's really convenient. One quick disclaimer with storing API keys this way, it is possible that people can just decompile the app and grab the API key. So just be mindful of that, because if you want to publish your own app with API keys, I would strongly suggest creating your own server and then having your app use the server to contact Groq, because that way the server will have your API key and it's out of reach of people who really want to grab your API key. Okay, the next thing that we need to create is our AI provider, which is going to be what uses all these HTTP requests to talk to the server with Groq. So let's create a new Swift file. I'm calling this the AI provider because it provides all the AI stuff for us. And the first thing that we need to have in this is a AI config. This is where we're going to put in all the different information of our AI requests. And this is also where things can be tweaked around and changed if you want to customize your app. So the first thing that I want to create is the number of questions, maximum questions. I'm setting it to 5 for now. The second thing that we need is another public static let for our system message. Now, this is going to be a multi-line string, which is why we need 3 quotation marks on either end. I'm going to open up our system prompt text and paste it in. And as you can see, we already used some string interpolation. Let me rename this to max questions so it matches up. And there you go. Again, the system message is just the AI instruction, as I mentioned before. Okay, the next thing, we have the model that we want to use. So this is the name of the AI model. This is, for me, it's going to be Llama 3.3 spec deck, but feel free to use other ones. Just pick around and see which one works best for you. So the other one that I also want is the request URL. This is going to be our URL to the AI service, Groq. And also, if you're using another service, it'll just be a different URL. This is, I'm converting the string into a URL and force unwrapping it just because I know this is a valid URL and shouldn't have any issues. Okay, so let's create the AI provider now, where we're actually making all this AI stuff. First of all, we need to set up a structure for the AI response. So we need to create one for the API response, which can be decodable. Decodable just meaning that we can convert the result data and decode it into this struct here. Now, Groq has us respond with a bunch of choices. It's just a bunch of different messages that the AI could respond with, but most of the time it's just one choice. And this choice is in and of itself its own object. So let's create another one for choice. And the choice itself is a message. So we'll do message. And then we also need one more object for our message, which is going to be the decodable. So we need one for our role, which is a string, and we also need another one for our content, which is also a string. Okay. All these errors should go away. Great. And now this AI provider only really has one function that we can only use. So let's create run inference, our one and only function. We're going to make this public so it can be accessed outside of this file. And then prompt will be our string. So this is going to be a string prompt because we need to pass in some sort of topic for the quiz. And this will respond with a response. This will be our output. And we're going to make it optional because in case there's an error with sending this request, we can just output nothing or nil. First of all, we need to create a body. This is going to be all the parameters that we're going to feed into Groq to say, hey, we want this model, we want these messages to be sent through. So let's create our payload constant. This is going to be of type string any because it is a dictionary and the value can be anything from a dictionary to an integer or whatever. The first thing that we need is a model, which is our AI configs model. We also need our messages, which will be an array of messages. So we can create another array, and each thing here can actually just be its own message itself. So to do that, we need to do response.choice.message. And then with this, we can just have our system role and our content being the AI configs system message. So again, just because it's the same structure, we can actually just have it be fed in as our input too. Except I also want this to be encodable as well. So because we're converting this this object into data, we also need it to be encodable. Or an easier way of doing this is replacing this with just codable. Okay, and then the next thing we need is another message for our user. So the role is the user and the content is the prompt. And then the last thing we need is a response format, which can be which is where we tell Groq to be outputting a JSON object, just like what we did in the playground. And this is everything. Again, if you're using a different AI service, this is the thing that will change the payload, and also the response structure here. It should be pretty similar if you ask me, but just check the API documentation for that if you're using some other service. Okay, now it's time to create the request. So let's create a variable for a request. This is going to be a URL request for the URL that we had, the request URL. We need to make sure that this is a post request because if we're sending this payload, it has to go through a post. And request, we also need to set our header fields, which basically is where we can feed in some things like a content type and authorization. So content type is just saying that we're exchanging information through JSON files. So application JSON is that format. If it's an image, then obviously content type will be different and all that. Authorization is our way to provide the API key. So it's going to be bearer space. And then this is where we put our secret API key. Okay. And then after this, we need to do a do catch because this is getting into dangerous territory where some of the things that we do can return errors. If there are errors, we'll just print the error simply and then return nil because we couldn't get the request to work. First of all, we need to convert our request into data. So let's try that out. So we'll do let's payload data. And this is going to be JSON serialization dot data. And this is going to be some JSON object. Again, this is our our payload data as our dictionary, and it'll convert it into that just data. Now, because it can have errors, we need to mark it with try. And then from there, we can set our request's body, HTTP body to payload data. Okay. From here, this is where we can actually make that URL request and send it to the internet for Groq to respond with. So let's create a fancy little variable here or constant for our data and response, just because the request will return these two values and we need to create two different variables for it. This will be a try await because await means that the URL request will take some time. So then this will just be our URL session shared data to create that request. And we can pass in our request from earlier. So basically everything below this point will be after we've gotten the information back with our data and also our response code, so HTTP code. And so we can also use our response to check if it's within the 200s to see if it's okay. But first of all, we need to set async to this function because this is an async await thing. And then we can check if a response code is okay. So let's first of all parse our response as a HTTP URL response so we can get that response code. And then we also need to check if it is within 200 and 299, which is the OK codes. So it contains response.status code. If either of those fail, that's why we have a guardlet. We can say, I don't know, response fail, and then we can just put in our data just for debugging purposes in case we have issues. We need to convert this data into a string. So let's do that. And then we're using the UTF-8 string encoding. Now, if there is no data, we'll just default with no data or something like that. Okay. Oh, and also we need to return nil inside our guard. So if that fails, that's what the guard's for. It'll guard us from going through and continuing. Okay, last thing here is to parse the response into our response format. So parse response, we'll do a try, and then this is what we're going to use a JSON decoder for. So we serialize it, encode it with JSON serialization, and then we can decode the response with JSON decoder. So let's decode from the data. The type that we're doing it with is response, and we need to add self after that. And we're decoding it from the data. Once that's done, let's just return the parse response. Okay, and this is how you contact the API. So once you do this, and once you get your parse response, you can then go get the AI's response. So this is sort of like a basic way of reaching out to the AI. Let's create a new file again for our trivia manager. And the trivia manager is where we're going to manage all the game-related mechanics of this app. But for now, we're just going to use Trivia Manager to call AI provider and create that quiz question thing. Okay, let's create our class first. Trivia Manager. This needs to be an observable object because we have a bunch of little variables that we want to pass onto our SwiftUI view, and so we can use observable to update the SwiftUI views. Okay, and first of all, let's get all the structures out of the way. So let's create our quiz structure, which is the response JSON format. So this is going to be decodable, and again, it's based off whatever this monstrosity is. So we're just putting it in Swift terms, essentially. This is decodable, and within this, we will have our series of questions, which is a array of questions. Again, that's another struct. Within the question, we have our content of the question. We also have the options, which is an array of options, and then the answer explanation, which will be a string for the explanation for why that option is correct. Now, the next thing is to create the option struct, which is decodable, but also identifiable, because we need to have the object, basically in the SwiftUI, we are going to have a for each loop, and we need a way for the for each loop to know which option is which in which order. So this is what identifiable is. So for identifiable, we need to actually create an ID, which is UUID. And then content, this is going to be a string. And then we also have whether the option is correct or not, Boolean. Now you will see that there's a whole warning here. And it just means that because this ID is already set with a UUID, which is a custom unique ID, we do not want to have that be set when we decode it from the response. So because of that, we need to specify which things we can actually set from the response, which is content and correct. So we've got coding keys to save the day. Coding keys is going to be of type string and coding key, and this is an enum, which means that we have cases. We have one case for content, and we also have another case for correct. Coding key without the S. Okay, errors are gone. That's great. The other thing that I want to do is have a game state enum outside of our quiz. This is where we're going to have our menu, our game, and this is all the different states of the game, so we can sort of keep track of which part of the game we're in. We need answer correct, we also need answer wrong, and then we also need to have another one for game over, once the game has finished. We need a function as well for our background color. This is just going to be for convenience, so we can convert this game state into its own unique color. So this will return a color, which we need to import SwiftUI for, so we can actually use this color type. To do this, we need to check, we need to do a switch on itself, the enum. So switch self, And I'm doing this because there is a autocomplete for this. So we'll fill it all out. We've got a menu case, so in this case we'll return primary yellow. Then for a game, the background is going to be purple. If it's correct, it's going to be light blue. Wrong, it's going to be pink, BG pink. And then we're also going to do blue for our game over screen. Cool. And then a few more things. We need to create a constant for our AI provider. I'm going to make it private, so it'll only be used within this trivia manager. This is our instance of the AI provider, so we can actually use it. And then we're going to do some published values, which we will be able to pass on to SwiftUI. That's what published is for. So we've got a public one. Because it's going to be used by SwiftUI, they should be public. So first one is going to be about our questions, which will be our series of quiz questions. And then we also need another one for our game states. This is going to start off with a menu. So we're going to do game states.menu, published. And then we've got another one for our number of questions correct. So we can keep log of how many questions we got right. We're going to start off with 0. Okay, and we need 2 more functions before we can test out the AI. The first one is going to be private, so we can fetch the quiz. This will be with a given prompt, the topic. And then this will be also async, so we can output the quiz optional in case it fails. The first thing we need to do is another guardlet, so we can do response and store it safely. The first thing we need to do is wait for the AI provider to run the inference with our prompt. And then we need to grab the quiz as a string, which will be our response, basically a response message in a sense. So it will be response.choices.first.message.content to access that. Now, if either of those are nil, we can just return nil and exit out of the function early. Now we need to do another do catch because this is where we're going to decode the quiz string into our quiz. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this information, this code here, because it's the exact same. So it's the same as basically the last bit of that AI provider. We need a parsed quiz. I'm just going to rename these. And then the type we're going to decode it to is the quiz from our data from this quiz string. So we need to convert that data from the quiz string. Let's see if we can convert it from a string with the encoding. Let's take a look. Okay, so we need to do string, quiz string.utf8 to get the encoding from that. So this is how we convert a string into data, so we can decode it into our quiz. Okay, this error, is gone. Great. And we need one more, which is public, so that our views can call this trivia manager to start the quiz. So let's do public func start quiz. No parameters this time, and I am going to, within this, have a task. This task here is going to be where we wait for our quiz to be created. So guardlet quiz equals await fetch quiz, just like this here. Oh, actually, we do need a parameter, don't we? We need one for our topic, so we can pass in the topic that we need to make our quiz from. Okay, from this, let's see if we can fetch a quiz. If we can't, we're just going to return and not do anything. We're also going to set the questions to the quiz's questions, and we're also going to set the game state to be game state dot game. Cool. I'm also going to, when we start the game, just reset the number of questions correct to 0 in case we're starting the game again. From this, we're just going to also add main actor in front of the start quiz, just because we are modifying some things that are uh, part of the UI. And so whenever you modify things that are in the UI that are asynchronous, you just need to do at main actor. Okay. From here, let us go into our content view, and we're just going to try out this game, essentially, or try out this AI response. So let's create a state object variable for our trivia manager. This would be trivia manager, like that. State object means that we can pass it to the other views, the game view, menu view, because we're going to be creating other files for that. Okay, so we need to do, we need to create a button so we can test it out. So we're going to have a button, just have whatever in it, doesn't matter for the text. And then for the actual code for the button, we need to do trivia manager.start quiz, and we're going to put in a template quiz or a placeholder quiz. We're going to just do animals, just like what we had before. Now, once we start a quiz, actually, let's modify this trivia manager. I want this task to be part of the SwiftUI part, and this will be apparent later on, so the reason will be important later. But just because of that, I'm going to set this to be async. Okay, in our content view, let's put task inside our action. So we can have our trivia manager. So we can wait for the trivia manager to create the quiz, and then we're just going to print out the trivia manager's questions. This is why I'm doing it, just for debug purposes, but also will have a purpose later on. But yeah, okay. Once you print out the questions, we can see if we can actually get some data out of this AI. So let's give it a go. I'm going to run the simulator and see if it works. Okay, we've got a very basic app here, but this is just to test out the AI portion of this app. So I'm going to go ahead and press the button, see if it responds with anything. Oh, it crashes, which is not a good thing to have happen. So let's see what we did. Alright, I'm going to stop this app, and it seems like the issue here is an invalid type in JSON write. So let's go back to our AI provider, and perhaps we might need to change these messages to just be a manual dictionary. Perhaps my attempt at this just did not work very well. So I'm going to, again, write it out, but just in a more JSON-friendly format. AI config.system_message. And then we're going to have another one for the user with a prompt. All right, let's give it another go. Okay, it looks okay, and look at that. We have a list of a bunch of questions. Don't worry about it looking really uh, ugly right now because we haven't actually put it into an actual quiz UI. So there we go. That is our AI side of things. So I'm gonna end it off here, and I'm going to create a new part where we actually do the UI side, because this current video is getting a little long. All right, I'll see you in part 2. That's it for part 1 of the series. In part 2, we're going to finish off the app with all the UI, so I'll see you there.